All right, so as Annie had said, we are here to talk about content science, and which is really trying to develop a more of a systematic, data-driven approach to doing what we all do in this digital customer experience space. I'm Dennis Augustine. I'm a partner at Konabos, and I'm here with, on this side, I guess, of me.
I'm Rachna Gupta. I'm Digital Marketing Manager at Konabos. I would like to introduce the Konabos team to you. You will know a lot of the Konabos team, who now include 6 Sitecore MVPs from their work in the Sitecore community. This, of course, includes Anindita, who invited us here today. Thank you, Annie, for inviting us.
Thank you.
We specialize in composable Jamstack DXP solutions and, of course, Sitecore. So I will introduce the session today. So our agenda for this session will be how to use scientific and data-driven approaches to generate content that is meaningful and engages your customer. So back to Dennis.
Yes. The first thing we want to talk about today is something that I see over and over again. It's folks or organizations rather, who end up stuck in phase one, waiting for this mythical phase two, which I'm sure so much you've probably heard about in the Sitecore space. And that phase two is the phase where they're going to do content personalization. You know, digital customer experience is not like the old web. Been doing this for about 22 years now, and remember, you know, when we started some of the more static web experiences back in the day, that was just all about getting that static content out there. But now that we have more dynamic digital customer experience systems, we're really all about getting content out to the customer just at the right time, the right content, to the right kind of customer profile at exactly the right time in their buying journey. And that's really what DCX, modern DCX, and digital customer experience platforms like Sitecore is all about. It's about then customer customer-centric content personalization. So that journey is really about mapping it to their experience, speaking to them just where they are. And that's something that customers today demand. We're in the Amazon generation, where customers have a lot higher expectations of what their digital experiences will be all about. I'm a member at the YMCA. There's a scheduling tool that is often used at that place to find out when I can have a basketball run. And it's frustrating to me if I have to go back to the same page every time and again to tell them, you know, where I'm located. So again, they can figure out what my favorite YMCA is, and again, have to filter things out so they know I don't want to take the children's taekwondo class and I just want to see just the basketball runs. And for me, that's a little bit of a frustrating experience. So, I mean, we want to make sure as much as possible that we're going to be delivering the kinds of experiences that our customers have come to expect these days. Personalized experiences meant just for them. And why are we going to do that? Well, because this stuff works. Content personalization, we know it works. And this came from Forrester's, I think probably 2-3 years ago. Saying about 93% of organizations that personalize get an average 19% increase in sales. That's an incredible number, like 19% increase in sales just by personalizing. So you would think, obviously, I mean, everybody should do that, right? But the reality is, according to VentureBeat, that about 80% of marketers out there don't personalize. And that's some of the basic feature set of something like Sitecore. Just the ability to personalize, and that's the same sort of number that we see with Sitecore customers as well. It's right across the industry. It's an endemic problem that they buy all of these wonderful tools and then fail to use them for what you have them for. And it's not for that, you know, the capabilities of the tools. It's there. It's not just often for lack of knowledge, it's there. But I wonder then why that may be. And actually, I'm going to just, whether it be in chat or if you just want to unmute your mic temporarily and let us hear from you right now. If you, first of all, has this been your experience? And those of you who work with Sitecore and have Sitecore customers, how many of you have customers who do not personalize, or maybe at an organization where you're not using the personalization features? And why don't they do that? And if you unmute your mic, or if you put something in the chat there, I would love to hear from you at this time. I'll just wait just a moment.
For me, Annie here. So most of the time in interviews and stuff, I remember people would ask about personalization, and my typical answer was, "Oh yeah, you know about the phase one thing. We've always never gone past the phase one. I have theoretical knowledge on this. I really haven't worked too much on doing the personalization." That's like a typical answer I used to get as well. When I take interviews, I get the same answer from people saying that, yeah, I know about personalization, but it's not really come around in our client project. So it's a very common thing that we have seen. Most of the time, even if you offer the client, personalization or offering, then tell them that Sitecore has so many features and all that, they might not have the data to actually give us the exact business requirements that we want in the form that we wanted to do the Sitecore personalization. So that seems to be a common disconnect that we have. And in the end, the client is just overwhelmed and they're like, "Oh, fine, we'll just do Google Analytics, leave it. We'll figure this out
Right.
later and we'll see it later." So that's a common thing that I've seen.
Yeah, we'll figure it out later. We've always done it that way with our Google Analytics, and we'll figure out the Sitecore thing later. And it's funny because they've bought Sitecore after all, right? They could have bought a static. They could have done it on WordPress. They didn't have to buy a tool that was so heavy on personalization. Any other kind of reasons, maybe perhaps why that might happen in an organization? Anybody want to comment on that? Going once.
Hi, this is Matt McQueenie. Hi, Dennis.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, I think playing off of what Annie said, I think sometimes putting the business requirements for the main build can sometimes be very onerous, which they should be to build it the right way. But then when you get to that next stage, really content science and personalization should be as, I don't want to say onerous, right? But it should be as exacting to figure out all of the requirements to get this done so that it can work correctly.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I mean, I'm hearing then that like the traditional requirements become part of the main build in most cases, and then it's often considered just a separate exercise. We'll get the site built first, and then we'll personalize the stuff. So it's put as a separate and kind of exercise in that case. And I think you're absolutely right. This is what we've seen over and over again. People will go through, and I'll tell you a little bit of a story a little bit later on in this thing about a situation where we had exactly that situation. We're going through the traditional build process and then treating the personalization stuff like it is a separate exercise. And I think those are really good reasons and maybe reasons, maybe excuses, maybe inputs for this problem. But let's kind of drill down a little bit further into diagnosing why this happens. Why are we in this content paralysis, personalization paralysis phase all the time, where we're stuck in phase one and failing to do what we should do to deliver these dynamic customer experiences? I think there's 4 reasons, and I'll kind of break down each of them as we go through. The first one being having a very waterfall project mentality. Secondly, siloed teams working on their own. And thirdly, that customer experience, or CX, is a bit of a black box. I'll explain that a little bit later on. And lastly, inertia, good old inertia, just the failure to kind of move things along. And let's kind of break down why those things happen and they lead to this content paralyzation problem that we have. It's a lot of P's in there. I'm going to slip over my personalized problem paralysis scenario. It's a lot of P's. First of all, the the waterfall mentality. And I think, Matt, when you touched on it a little bit when you talked about these different sort of phases that we go into. First of all, I want to say that personalization, or that thinking that you should be doing when you start to think about personalization, is not a phase. It should not be a phase. You should not think about it as something that you're going to do after the main website build, because the main website build, after all, is to talk to your customers and to drive results. And so what we should be doing when we're doing the initial build of the website, of the initial build of the customer experience, is to think about how we're going to personalize that content, how we are going to map the content that we're planning for the site to the particular journey of the user, and to think about using personalization in that context. Secondly, I want to say that the waterfall mentality, one where we have these large build projects that go into the bat cave for 6 months, 8 months, a year or more, and we think that we're going to dream up this wonderful transformative digital experience that the customer is going to want, and we're going to build it for 6 months, 8 months, a year, and then we're going to deliver it, and it's just going to connect with the customer, and we're going to have remarkable results because we got it just right. I'm going to tell you that's a little bit overconfident, and you probably are better suited to actually just get the stuff out there in a much shorter time frame. Don't overdo it, and then use the tools that you have, especially in something like Sitecore, to iterate and to improve your experience gradually over time, rather than thinking that you're going to get it right out of the gate. So the waterfall mentality betrays a little bit of overconfidence. And when it comes to understanding what the customer wants, you want to really take a much more humble and agile mentality, a mental approach towards dealing with your designs of your sites. Secondly, we mentioned was siloed teams. And I want to say that that's really has to do with a lot of times just not including everybody in the organization, or everybody who's involved in the digital experience in the design process. And that involves a number of different people. We'll get into that a little bit later on, who you should be involving in when you're going through that, through the design of your solutions, and then the designing of your approach. I've seen so often where we're creating content or planning digital campaigns and failing. Customers have been failing traditionally in their business units to talk to the SEO expert, or perhaps the social media marketer who's seeing trends on social, seeing what's working, is not consulted by those in the business who are then designing those campaigns. So it's really useful and helpful to engage the right people. And that's another reason why we're kind of seeing these silos and the failure to personalize in phase one. Thirdly, I mentioned that customer experience is a bit of a black box. Let me tell you what I mean about that in 1 second. It's a black box in the sense that we don't know what's happening between the screen and the mind of the customer, right? So we don't have access, or direct access rather, to that information, to that interaction that's happening between the customer and the screen, the customer's mind, and your experience on the screen. Now, Rachna is going to talk about a little bit in a few minutes about some things that we can use to actually get a little bit of insight. But that's always been a challenge, that we make some assumptions about what's going on, but not having direct access to that customer's mind is really a limiting thing when we're trying to take a more data-driven, systematic approach towards customer experience. And lastly, in terms of the problem, I'll say that one of the biggest problems for me has always been sort of what Annie had mentioned when she answered that question a little while ago. It is that they'd always done it in this way. They're going to deal with the design, and that stuff with Sitecore, well, it's good that they have the tools, but we always use our Google Analytics or other tools like that, and we're just going to stick to that. Well, you've heard the saying supposedly by Albert Einstein that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. And I got to tell you that, I'll get to a small story to tell you about that. I think it was about 5, 10 years ago, or maybe more like 5, 6 years ago. I'm in a Sitecore implementation shop, and we have this customer who's got a really great, very reputable UX agency who's designing their site and doing their user stories and everything else, doing their customer experience. Well, they ended up, I wanted to work with them to say, hey, here's how you use Sitecore to build a better customer experience. And I want to show you how you can not have the homepage be a static page. You can use that tool and design that homepage in phase one just for that. They said, that's really cool, but we've always done UX this way. We're just going to keep doing it that way. And that's one of the big barriers, I think, for people to really get over this personalization problem. It's just the inertia of always doing things the same old way. And the solution for that really then, and I'm going to kind of speed up through some of these slides, is so that I'm going to leave enough time for Rachna to touch on some of the really wonderful things that you can do practically to get better insights. The solution for that is to take a much more scientific approach to what you're doing. And the scientific method has been as a human race, one of our greatest inventions ever. It's taking a systematic approach to observation, asking questions, and running experiments to prove that we know what's going on with the world, and yes, with the customer and with the content. In a scientific method, everybody's involved. It's not just the theorist, it's not just the strategist, it's the strategist and the technologist. Something like the particle physics can't be done simply in calculations. You need to have engineers involved. When you're doing a scientific method, you have to come up with a theory as to how things work, and then you have to come up with some hypotheses that help you to validate that theory. So if I do this and I have this other action, then something else will happen. And then you have to test that to see whether or not what you hypothesize is true. Lastly, in the scientific method, it's all about learning. And this is where that humble mindset comes in, because a good day in a day of the scientist is the day when he discovers that what he thought previously was wrong, or she discovers that there's a new breakthrough because we've determined that some of our assumptions or hypotheses were wrong, or perhaps our whole thinking of around what we thought about the science was wrong. And that translates directly into content science as well. So who do we involve in content science? Well, over on the regular science side, there was technologists and strategists, same thing. When it comes to content science, when it comes to designing your approach to customer experience, include your strategists, include your business leaders, but also at the same time, include those technologists, developers, and solution architects. They need to be at the table in order for you to have an approach that works in phase one. Secondly, make sure that you leverage data to create a kind of theory around what your customer is thinking. And with that, I'm going to actually pass over a little bit now to Rachna, who's going to show you and talk to you a little bit about some of the tools that you can use to get inside of that black box of the customer's mind.
Yeah. Thank you, Dennis. So I will be touching upon some of the tools that you can use to get the actionable insights. So finding and using these actionable insights are important for any business. They help in making strategic and well thought through process and decisions. So I'll be touching upon the first one is on-site search. So the very first tool that you need to analyze these actionable insights is on-site search. So what does it do? It provides you those valuable insights that what people are searching for on your website. What did they find and what did they not find? So how does that data helps you? So I'll give you an example. Say if you are an e-commerce website selling t-shirts and somebody is looking for a purple t-shirt on your website, and the person did not find the product. So this is the time that you should use this insight and you want to introduce that product on your website. So that is how on-site search can really help you analyze that data and come up to those conclusions of what should be there on the website and what should not be there on the website. Next is your voice of customers. So what I would suggest is you should always regularly read your customer reviews, understand what they like and dislike about your product or your business. So you should conduct these reviews and surveys to identify what is your NPS and CSAT scores and act on these reports to improve your customer experience. So, there are tools out there in the market which you can use to identify, conduct these surveys and record these findings to improve those experiences for your customers. The next thing that we all know is Sitecore Experience Analytics. Dennis has been telling about this, that people are not using Sitecore to the extent they should be. So when it comes to Sitecore Experience Analytics, you should try to create those pattern cards based upon the behavior and interest of specific on your website. Then you should be analyzing those pattern matches and accordingly have the right content on your website. So you should set up the goals and then study these goal completions. So Sitecore Analytics can help you identify the most engaging user journeys on your website. So you should be in a point where you keep analyzing those user journeys and then accordingly, implement this on your site and refine those journeys for your audience. So all this will add on to a great customer experience for your visitors.
That's awesome. Rachna, you mentioned two terms there,
Yeah.
NP
Yeah.
and what other score?
So one is the NPS and the other is CSAT.
What does that stand for? What does that mean? I'm not even sure.
Okay, so NPS is your Net Promoter Score. So what happens is when people conduct surveys, so they find how highly you will recommend somebody's product, how, you would have come across these surveys in the past where people send you about their product or a website or a service where you need to rate them. Okay, from 1 to 10, where do you rate this thing? And you will sometimes say, okay, 10. How will you recommend your product? You will say, okay, 9. 0, you don't want to recommend at all. So these are the metrics that you use to calculate these scores. So you get, so if it is a lower NPS, that means you need to really do something and you need to increase that NPS score for your product or your service. So it is like why people don't want to recommend. So find out those points and then act on them, because people should be recommending your products. So you need to bridge that gap. You need to understand your scores. So it is very important. So that is why the businesses do those surveys. Same is your CSAT. So it is your customer satisfaction score. So
Got it.
again, you go through these surveys, and that is why we do them.
Awesome. And I want to just call out when Rachna mentioned Sitecore with regards to the pattern matches. Pattern matches is all about having that system tool to tell you who you're talking to. Remember, we're talking about personalized content, so that's a two-way conversation. If we're in a conversation between you and I, if Rachna and I are talking, then I want to make sure I know who I'm talking to before I start spouting all the kind of stuff, because maybe she doesn't want to hear my nonsense, right? So I want to know that I am identifying that audience, and that's what those pattern matches help us to do in Sitecore.
So this is one of the most favorite topic that I always touch upon is your Google tools, your search engine tools. So let me just talk a little bit about them here. So these are some of the most beautiful tools in the industry. So you can use, when it comes to SEO tools, you can use tools like Moz, you can tools like Ahref, SEMrush. So these are the tools that you can use on your website to perform audits, fix any technical or content issues, and then evaluate what people are searching for on the internet, and then have a very focused customer content strategy. So what content you should be writing on your website. So all these SEO tools will help you, give you those insights. They will even help you track your website performance from time to time. So I always recommend people using SEO tools like these. Then coming to the very next important tool that you should never forget to use as a digital marketer is your Google Search Console. So it is a very wonderful tool that you need to understand. You need to ensure that your website is registered on Google Search Console. So what does this tool do? It tells you, what is happening on your website. So listen to Google. So Google is going to tell you what is wrong on your website, what is right on your website, what is performing, what is not performing. Take all this data, leverage Google recommendations, and change few things on your site to ensure that you are all set for success. When we talk about Google Search Console, the next thing that we also want to touch is Google Analytics. It is time traffic website, what is the long term traffic. So if you can analyze the last 3 months traffic on your website, so analyze all these things, connect these tools together, they work wonders. So that is what my recommendation as a digital marketer would be. Next is your answer the public. So what does Answer the Public do? It's a website. It's a brilliant website. It's a brilliant tool that provides you raw search insights about what customers are looking for on search engines in your local market. So, you are in India, you can find out what people are looking for in India. So say you want to sell t-shirts. So find out what are the questions associated with t-shirts. So you can find out all those questions that people are asking answers for. Just analyze them, pick these content ideas, answer them. So answer them on your website. So this is how your content strategy should be, by following all these 6 tools that I've just spoken about. Take these tools into considerations and then write your content strategy. So I don't think there will be any failures then.
Right on. And Rachna does the SEO and a lot of the digital marketing on the Konabos site. And Rachna, I'm always kind of surprised about what actually gets. We write down some of these, great pieces and stuff, and figure that's going to get all our traffic. But what's the most kind of trafficked or most popular content on the Konabos website?
Yeah, so on Konabos, what is happening is we have all these celebrity writers. So what I've analyzed is people are coming for those, those developers are coming for those experiences. They get stuck somewhere in their code. They come to our website, they find the right content, they want to implement them when they are writing their codes. So, like Akshay writes a lot of articles for people who are stuck into different problems when writing their codes. This is one thing. Second, we want to also focus on, organizations. So when that comes, we need to what people are searching more in terms of, like, we do Sitecore development. So what people are searching more in terms of Sitecore, we need to find out those keywords and we need to ensure that we have the right content strategy in place. So that is
Right
what I
on.
can say, Daniel.
Yeah, and I think that's was this thing too. We saw a lot of traffic with regards to how to fix this issue or that issue, and why are we seeing that traffic? Because that relates to somebody's pain, right? And
Right.
pain is a really strong motivator. That's a good thing for when you're developing your theory or your hypotheses about your customers. You have to understand what their pain is. It's a basic thing about selling. It's a basic thing for marketing is to understand customer pain. So through Search Console, you're finding out, what's painful for the customer, what's painful for the developers. So yeah, absolutely. And when you're doing these things, we started to see an uptick in traffic around content as a service and around headless approaches in these last few months. And noticing that those pages were getting a lot of traffic, we continue to pump out content in those particular topics, knowing that it was addressing the pain in the marketplace, right? So that's really great stuff for you to be able to consult with your SEO, pardon me, with your SEO experts, with your data scientists like Rachna, when you are deciding what marketing approaches you're going to take. Don't do it in isolation.
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to content strategy, you should always be testing your content ideas. So I will say humans love feeling special, and we really don't need any statistics to prove that, right? So we all love when something is specifically done for us and we connect better to such experiences. So I will say that is why personalization is important. Personalization has a higher propensity to convert. So start focusing on the needs, special needs and preferences of your customers. And remember, sky is the limit. So you need to, so the goal should be to create a wow factor by creating the right customer journeys using personalization on your website. Now there are two types of things that you can use. I have specified those here. One is your Sitecore personalization tool. So if you own a Sitecore website, nothing like it, you are half done. You already have all tools that you want to use and you want to optimize your personalization experiences on your site with. The second is your Google Optimize. So if you do not own a Sitecore website, or if you even own a Sitecore website, you have other sites where you are not using Sitecore, you can still personalize using Google Optimize. It's a very nice tool, simple to use, free to use, and you can give those experiences and test it out for your market and see how it works for you. So these will be my
Right.
recommendations. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the, like, I'm not sure whether does the Google Optimize also do the multivariate testing?
Google Optimize do a lot of testing, so at least A/B testing you can easily do on your site and see. I'm not very sure about multivariant, but I have done A/B
Mm.
testing using Google Optimize in the past.
Yeah, and these testing approaches, by the way, folks, that's one of the great things. The attitude of humility that having a scientific approach will give you is that when you're having these discussions about, hey, what should be put on the homepage? What really should get that real estate when you're doing that design? Well, test it. Just don't decide. I mean, just you don't know whether the thing that you're working on is actually going to appeal to the customer more than the thing that you might already have. So put them both up there and don't just flip things around and then see a downturn in your traffic or conversions. Put both experiences up, the old one and something new that you've just developed, and see what performs better before actually committing to the one or the other. And that's going to help you really to keep up with what the customer wants rather than giving them things that you just think that they might want and then finding out later on it doesn't resonate with them.
Right. Okay, so Dennis, are you ready? I just want to ask you a small question, and if anybody
Okay.
else also want to answer that. So, what do you think retirement remodeling mean?
Well, I see this retired looking guy with a paintbrush, so I'm going to think that this dude he's just retired and he is remodeling his home. Maybe he's empty nesting or something and he's remodeling his home. So
Okay, so
it's for remodeling your home when you retire.
okay, so basically it's remodeling your home when you retire because you see this image. So what about if we did not have any image here?
Retirement remodeling. Yeah, I mean, I
Any
don't
you
know. I
want to
guess.
try?
Yeah.
It's very vague. I don't know.
Think. Maybe what do you think retirement remodeling mean in India? What do you think?
Changing the way retired people spend their lives.
Okay.
Could be. What is it, Rachna?
So
Don't keep me
let's
in
go to the next
suspense.
slide. Let's go to the next slide. So retirement remodeling is a very vague word, as Annie said, right? So this is an example I would like to give you. So retirement remodeling for my client meant bathroom remodeling. So this is one of our clients that I
Oh,
was analyzing their website. Yeah, so
how is it
imagine.
even related?
So not related. That is why you need data-driven content ideas.
This
So
week
what has happened?
this week is completely
Yeah.
related. This is something which happened, a couple of days before. Once people get aged, right, they either using bathroom or using restroom, they need some support to, sit down or stand up. That's what this particular related. So retirement remodeling, right?
Ah,
Now it makes
okay.
more sense.
Yeah, you are
All
right.
right.
You're right. But you know what? People do not search for retirement remodeling. So when it comes to, you want to sell a product like this to your customers, you want to change their bathrooms, you want to remodel their bathrooms, then it should be bathroom remodeling, not retirement remodeling. So what we did for the customer, so we analyzed their page. I read the entire content. I understood that they are trying to talk about bathroom remodeling, but the page title is your retirement remodeling. Your URL says retirement remodeling. I went to Google Analytics. I analyzed how the content and the page is performing. I found nobody actually come on the website, on the web page. Nobody is getting what they need. So I thought maybe people do not search for these kind of things in US. So this is US market. So when I went to my keyword tools, I realized people do not search for retirement remodeling, but they do search for bathroom remodeling. In fact, in an average month, so if I take that average searches in a month, 1 million people search for bathroom remodeling.
Oh.
So do you understand where the gap was, the content gap? So we were talking about retirement remodeling all this while, but we actually wanted to talk about bathroom remodeling. So what we have done now is change the URL, and the content talks about bathroom remodeling, but Google is also confused, whether it should put your page for retirement remodeling or whether it should put your page for bathroom remodeling. Now we have a focused content on the site. So we are talking about bathroom remodeling at retirement.
Uh-huh.
So and rather than retirement, it is more of like age, at an age. So if people retire at 60, so they don't need it at that point of time. Maybe they need it when they are 70, 75. So it is related to age rather than retirement. So with those changes, we could actually get better results for the user on this page. So this is one of the examples that I have for data-driven content ideas. And always go back to your data. Always understand what your Google Search Console says, what your Google Analytics say, what your other tools out there says, and then write your content. This is what I always tell in Konabos also. I keep coming up with my Excel sheet, okay, this is what we need to write about because people are looking out for these terms. They want answers to these pain points. So let's handle them.
Absolutely. And one thing I just wanted to say there, you've also in this example kind of touched on talking about bathroom remodeling. In this case, was the opportunity that had way more traffic, but it was bathroom remodeling at the particular stage for the customer, at the particular age and stage for the customer in particular. So that's interesting. So you also got some insights as to the phases the customer goes through and when to talk to them about what through that. I think there was also some interesting examples working with certain customers, Rachna, where you found, I think it was just this past year, where you found that some of the content that they had written many years ago was all of a sudden very fresh and they'd forgotten all about it, but it was the stuff that was getting the traffic. And what did you use? What kind of tools and techniques did you use to let them know, to prove, first of all, to find out that they were this content that was thought to be old is now fresh, and then to show that to them?
Yeah, so the best tool to do that is your Google Search Console that I touched just now. You need to keep going to your Search Console, and if you link it with your analytics, all the data is in analytics flowing freely, smoothly for you. Just go into your analytics, join it with your Google Search Console, go back to reports and see what page is performing better. So, you need to dig into some analytics to find out that. You need to, I will say if you play with your analytics so often, you will be able to crack it. You will be able to understand what works better on your website, what is not working at all, what you want to change. So these things can easily come out with tools like Google Analytics for you.
Right, right. And I want to say too, the Sitecore analytics side of things, we have that idea in Sitecore called engagement value score. And sometimes you find a disconnect, by the way, between pages that might have high traffic, but very low engagement. So they're not actually driving a lot of goals Not people aren't going there and then going to some things and triggering goals or signing up for newsletters or buying things. So the value of those pages are not in line with their page views. So you got to look when you're doing content science, when you're trying to get these insights. You want to look for things like, these variances that you might not expect, as signs of things that you can write on, content gaps that Rachna talked about that you can identify through on-site search and Google Search Console and all kinds of tools like that. So thank you, Rachna, for those tools, and of course for all of the great work you continue to do for us over at Konabos in this area and for our customers.
Thank you, Dennis.
Rachna's wearing, you'll see her little cone. She has a Konabosing shirt that she's got for the great work that she does.
Yeah. Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah. So in conclusion, really, I just want to highlight, the problem again has been this paralysis, and part of the main problem or the main reasons for this kind of paralysis are that we have not traditionally been involving both the technical and business teams in this sort of strategic discussion. And you really do have to have, I think that, my role, this customer experience architecture role, has been a missing one in so many organizations for so long. And we're trying to focus on that in our business, is really tying together how the data and the business strategy and the platform tools, the marketing strategy all fit together when we're planning the site in the first place, when we're developing it. And we want to develop it to be testable, to be data-driven, to really have an understanding of what the customer is looking for. And we get that knowledge through all of the tools that Rachna had mentioned. We develop some hypotheses saying, hey, if I change the name of the thing from retirement remodeling to bathroom remodeling, I'm going to have greater traffic because people resonate with that theme at a page rather than the other way around. And you can test those things, test, learn, and optimize your solution, your customer experience, leveraging those tools. It's an iterative approach. It's not a phase. It's just how you do customer experience, and it should be something you should be doing over and over every day. And really, that is it for our presentation. I'm on Twitter as Sitecore Dennis. We have Rachna at Rachna Gupta on Twitter. You can follow us both. Look out there for some great posts. Rachna's got some good stuff coming out on strategy, SEO, marketing, and all that kind of stuff. I'll be doing a lot of strategy and composable DXP sort of chats as we go along there too. So look out for us there. And once more, I want to thank Annie, who's a member of the team again, for inviting us. This is the first pass at our content science presentation. Sorry, Ken could not be here with us today. He has his head down doing some customer work, so I want to not distract him. But on behalf of Konabos and Rachna and myself, Annie, well, thank you for listening today.